I'm going to request our Executive Dean, Professor Edith Pashwana, to do the formal welcoming and give us a few opening remarks. Thank you.
Program Director, Professor Charlotte Beitender. Thank you for opening this on time. Thank you. We have people online, and it's not nice to wait online. Your Excellencies, the Dean of the African Mission in South Africa, and also the the Ambassador of Eritrea, His Excellency Salih Omar Abdu, His Excellency Ambassador Mr. Mohad Fadel, Embassy of the Sahrawi Republic, His Excellency Ambassador Mohammed Isaac Ibrahim, Embassy of the Somalia, His Excellency Ambassador Buba Ayi Saneh. And I apologize for maybe not pronouncing your names properly. The High Commission of Gambia, Ms. Penda Guse Ndiaye, Embassy of Senegal, Ambassador Dennis Dlomo, former South African ambassador to Algeria and Mexico, representatives from various missions here in South Africa, our panelist, Dr. Luke Mupinga Shato, our postdoctoral fellow here at the TM School, Professor Patrick Bond, distinguished professor at the University of Johannesburg, Dr. Elfas Ndou, senior lecturer at the College of Economic and Management Sciences here at UNISA colleagues, the TM School staff, executive, postdoctoral fellows, students, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, good morning. Yes, we have to do this. The patron always tells us that it's important to observe protocol. Always, President Mbeki teaches us that it's always important to observe protocol. I know it takes much of your time. Other people say, observed protocol, or they just say I'm standing on existing or established protocol, but it's very important sometimes to do this. And I just want to welcome you all. It is my utmost pleasure to welcome you to the University of South Africa, and in particular the Thabo Mbeki School of Public and International Affairs this morning, and to our postdoctoral seminars. The university is pleased to host you here at Mecklenburg campus today, but I believe that you are also familiar with our beautiful, beautiful campus of Irene. You have to, if you have never been to Irene, you have to go to Irene and see our new beautiful campus. We have not started the building yet, but when you enter the place, you'll find peace and tranquility. We are in the bush. You'll forget that you are in a city of Pretoria. So it's a beautiful space that will give us time for ideation and for dialoguing and also for discourse. It's a nice space, and I'm inviting you. Just as if you find yourself around Irene, just look at your Google, say UNISA Conferencing Center. Type it there, and then in your Google map or your Waze, you'll be able to find us and reach us there. And I also am privileged to be associated with people of your caliber, scholars, practitioners, students, staff, and also our diplomats. This seminar today takes place at two critical moments in the country. First, South Africa will be hosting the G20 forum in November this year, an annual meeting of heads of state and government from the largest and emerging economies along with the EU and AU to discuss and coordinate on pressing global issues. South Africa's hosting of the G20 happens at a time of increasing global fragility and polarized political landscape. And the theme chosen for this event is solidarity, equality, and sustainability, and which actually resonates with the founding values of South Africa. As a university, we are also honored to have been identified as the co-host or the partner community by DERCO, the Department of International Relations and Cooperation in this country, to collaborate with them to hold some of the town halls that they are going to be doing around the country. UNISA boasts a deep intellectual heritage, vibrant colleges, and robust infrastructure to support the country in this endeavor. And hence, we will be going throughout the country with DERCO at various municipalities to do this. Second, South Africa will be hosting a national dialogue to reflect on the past 30 years of democracy and to work towards a new vision and program for the next 30 years. So the call for national dialogue was made by none other than the patron of the TM School and UNISA Chancellor, Mr. Thabo Mbeki, on 30 April 2024. And this move was supported by the President. And a fund to support this initiative was set aside and announced at the 2025 State of the Nation address by His Excellency President Cyril Ramaphosa. At the heart of the national dialogue is the concern that South Africa faces unprecedented and dangerous levels of civic disengagement, exhibiting signs of losing hope in the very idea of democracy. And at the heart of this is the apparent failure of leadership and socio-economic regression, a challenge that society must face head-on and resolve. This, I quote unquote, is the preamble to the National Dialogue Strategic Document. So UNISA has again partnered with the government of South Africa to host this national dialogue, and this also confirmed the role UNISA plays in South Africa, not just as an educational provider, but also as a critical and integral part of public life and science diplomacy worldwide. And the Thabo Mbeki School has demonstrated dynamic growth and institutional maturity in the first half of 2025 across teaching, research, internationalization, and community engagement. And key academic achievement developments at the school includes the long-awaited accreditation of two flagship programs, the Masters and PhD in Public and International Affairs. And this accreditation has sparked great interest from prospective students who also congregated here on the 30th of April 2024 to mark the first TM School's Open Day. So 2025 has seen successful delivery of our short learning programs and master classes, including regional training programs on the management of elections, which was done in Botswana. And the school's research output also exceeded projections in 2024 and continues to grow in 2025 with active international conference participation by our academics. Today, we are excited to unveil one of our gems. Our postdoctoral are very important to us, and to be a postdoctoral here, it is a privilege, and also we are honored because we attract the brightest postdoctoral fellows in the country. So, and we actually support them through these seminars so that they can be able to understand that they have a voice and their voice matters. And they can be able to stand on platform, on global stages, not just here at UNISA or in South Africa, but also in global stage to be able to enter into discourses that affect the world. So today we are excited to unveil one of our own, Dr. Luke Mupinga-Shato. He recently joined us in 2025. This is his first seminar here. And I am very excited to introduce him to you. His topic is going to be trade, mis-invoicing, institutions, and financial systems, unveiling hidden drains on African growth. I mean, from the title, you can tell where we are going with this, and I think it's a very important one. That's why I had to do the preamble around G20, because these are the matters that ministers of, if we know G20 was about ministers of finance before the head of states came in. And since the joining of the head of states, it has become too political, as we can see. What is happening now, whether we don't know whether we are going to end here in South Africa with a G19 or a G20. So you can see. So that's why I'm saying it's a very apt topic, and I want to congratulate Dr. Mupungashutshato as well this morning, and also wish him well in his seminar, and be kind to him. It's his first seminar at the TM school, not first seminar, but because he's a doctor already. It's his first seminar here, but I wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Pashwana, for so eloquently highlighting the timely and the relevance of this next session of our series of postdoctoral seminars. As Professor Pashwana has already alluded, Dr. Luke Mpungashatu, he's my own, I'm mentoring, so I'm thinking ahead again. He has joined us only recently, so just let me give you a brief background as by means of introduction. Luke, you are welcome in the meantime to come to the front. Dr. Luke Mpungashatu is one of our postdoctoral fellows here at the Thabo Mbeki School of Public and International Affairs. He holds a PhD in economics from the University of Witwatersrand. Dr. Mpungashatu's research interests include international trade policy, financial governance, development economics, and illicit financial flows. He has extensive experience in macroeconomic analysis, econometric modeling, and policy research across African countries. So prior to his postdoctoral research here at the Thabo Mbeki School, he served as an economist in both the public and the private sectors, advising on trade and investment strategies. Luke, we are most definitely looking very forward to this political sensitive topic that you are going to address. Good luck.
Good morning. I want to start by thanking Prof for doing a very important job for me and allow me to do what you said I must not do. I'll stand on the protocols that have already been observed by you. Thank you very much. So, what is it? What is the story? Why are we worried? Where are we coming from? Where are we going? What is it? So it's believed that international trade spurs growth. It prepares for growth. So if you trade more, you're likely to benefit from trading. But as an African continent, we've been trading for ages, and it's not reflective. So my claim, my initial claim, I promised myself that I will not say this, but forgive me. So I was listening to the former president, Robert Mugabe. He visited Zimplats, sister company to Implats. And then all this while Zimplats has been declaring platinum in the ore body. But I don't know who whispered to him to say, no, this ore body has got quite a lot of other minerals that these guys are not declaring. So right there, he says, no, you guys have been declaring platinum, but this ore body has got a lot of minerals. So what's happening? So that then drove me to want to find out what else are we missing in these products that we're selling as Africa. What is missing? So, given that we've been trading for ages as Africa, it's still not reflecting. So what's going on? So the claim was, number one, there's some playing around of invoices. Either you're changing the quantity or the price or the quality, depending on how you benefit. If you're exporting and you want to benefit on the other side of the border, you underreport and maximize on the other side. And if you're importing, you know that you're going to pay duty. You underreport the import invoice, such that you pay less duty. But who's losing in all this? Is the government. So at the end of the day, we're saying the government is failing to sustain development. But why? We've been trading. We have been selling as countries, but it's not reflective. So the departure point was, so what's happening in terms of trade? So we wanted to find out, initially, what is the magnitude? We wanted to find out what's the size. And to do that, we could not do the whole of Africa, forgive me. We would have loved to do that. But it's a strenuous process. But the important question that came out is, how are you going to leave this other country and consider this one? So that question took us a lot of time to try and see, why are we going to pick Gambia and leave Zambia, pick South Africa and leave Mozambique? So what we did is then we profiled a scientific process to say, let's have all exports for these countries for the past 10 years. Who is contributing to SADC's export basket more? Then we were left with 5 countries. Then we said, let's remove oil exports because they balloon the exports value. Then we're left with 5 countries. That's your Tanzania, that's your Zambia, that's your Namibia, that's your Malawi, and that's your South Africa. So we left with those countries. And then we said, no, we don't want just to look at this at that level. We want to go down and see what is in the basket, what is constituting this basket to be big. You'll be surprised that it's the song we've been singing all this while. It's your minerals. Specifically, for the 4 of them except Zambia, it's pearls, HS code 71. But for Zambia, for reasons that we all know, that they've got quite a large abundance of copper. So copper stood out. So we took it from SADC, took it to country, moved from country to sector, from sector to product. Why were we doing this? Because, like I tried to initiate, is that deliberate manipulation of import and export receipts has got a chunk that it tears away from the public funds. Ndikumana, the father of capital flight, argued that if we could stop this bleed, we don't need aid. If we could stop this bleed, the bleed is actually bigger than the aid. But it's amazing, over the past 2 decades, this has been the story. And we try to say, okay, so where are we now? Now that this is common, now that we know this is what is the problem gone down? Is the problem gone up? So eventually you'd find out there's a direct impact on what? On growth. Why? Because the same person that's supposed to fund social delivery, the same person that's supposed to provide for the development of the country is fleeced. So instead of us having 50 billion, we now have 5 billion. And we need to share that 5 billion amongst all of us. So this was the departure point of why we should be worried about. Okay. So you also notice that even the institutions around us, whether trade or not trade, they are aware of this. And they've actually highlighted that, no, in as much as we've got our issues amongst us, but there's something that our friends who are playing with are not doing in all honesty. When I say our friends, I'm trying to be polite because I know I might have few friends as I walk out of this podium, but our friends have not been honest in terms of, if we're going to go back and say, you have been noticing this trend of mis-invoicing over time, and you acknowledge it. So what are you doing to repatriate it back? That question still has to be answered. What are you doing about it? Yes, you're seeing it, it's there. And they are the ones that actually give us the figures that we juxtapose to calculate it. So what are you doing about it? So the other major bodies that are worried about how we're going in terms of development in Africa have actually made it a very important point in their vision. Between 2000 and 2022, we lost close to US $2 billion from trade mis-invoicing. And yet still, there are no signs that this is going down. So our claim was, okay, in as much as these are the volumes, who's enabling this? What are the drivers? What do you think is pushing this? Yes, now, the first part, we wanted to find the magnitude. Yes, we found it for the 5 countries. But what's enabling it? What's the key? What's causing it? What's driving it? Where does the appetite come from? Where does the lubrication come from? So we selected, or we left with 2 pillars. Number 1, the financial system. Number 2, the institutions, the political and economic. So those 2 were what we then wanted to test. What is the relationship between the volume of trade mis-invoicing and the financial system development? And we looked for proxies that measure the financial system development. We looked for proxies that measure the political and economic institutions. So we had 2 pillars. So then there was a temptation that we fell to say, okay, fine, let's interact them. Let's see the joint impact. Let's see how they perform with trade mis-invoicing independently, and then let's join them and see how far they push this phenomenon to be as huge as it is. So this was what we were trying to look at. So if you want to put it in a theoretical framework, this is what you get to. You've got international trade at the top there. Then you've got a financial system. You've got institutions. Your institutions as your control of corruption, government effectiveness, political stability and absence of violence, regulatory quality, rule of law, voice and accountability. Same as the financial system. So we have the index that is done by the IMF, and we've got the world governance, we've got the credit by private sector as the proportion of GDP, which is produced by the central banks. So those are the proxies that we wanted to make sure that we get this story right. If you think we use the wrong proxy, no, we'll get the right one. If you use the correct, we wanted to make sure that we are clear which of these is driving this, and obviously you've got your controls. One of the key controls that I must emphasize that was actually quite important for us was the shadow economy, where you've got these minerals being traded in the other side, which is not so formal. And I think if you have tried to sell anything that's mineral in South Africa, you bear with me that this happens, that such that when the train leaves for the port, the amount of ore it leaves with and it arrives with there is obviously not always going to be the same. So what's happening there? There is some stealing that happens in between when it leaves and when it gets to the port. So we wanted to see the underhand economy to say, how big is the black economy? And do you think it is an effect with this? The other reason was trade mis-invoicing is trying to be flowery. It's trying to make it look nice. Ideally, it's some form of smuggling because you were supposed to declare something and you didn't declare it. So in essence, you have smuggled. So whatever you smuggled ends into a certain market or it starts from a certain market. So we wanted to find out if that market is big, how much does it push this phenomenon? Then obviously, we wanted to see the tariff burden. How there is a concept that the more you tariff, the more you've got so many rules at home. Don't do this, don't do this. Kids are bound to do a lot of mistakes. So we wanted to see, are these sectors so tariffed? Are they so heavily burdened in terms of the taxes that they are trying to squeeze themselves out of the system? They're trying to make sure that they get a living. So we wanted to see that. Then lastly, we estimated, we looked for the drivers. Then the last thing was, what's the impact? Now, you've got GDP there in its controls, and you want to see how far Is this something that we should make noise about? That was the last question. Fine with the estimates, with the drivers, but is it something that we should make noise about statistically? That was the last. So this was structured in 3 essays. The first one, estimate. The second one, drivers. Then the last one, the impact. So it's important that I just brush through this. How do we measure this? I try to explain it, but let me just give a brief explanation without taking much more time. So suppose South Africa reports to have sent 5,000 worth of gold to China. That's exports by South Africa to China. When China gets these exports from South Africa, they will report them as imports from South Africa, right? But we adjust the exports for the cost of freight insurance, so that at least it should not be, yeah, it might not be the same, but it should not be too far away. But what's surprising, what is very sad, and this is very sad and very emotional to me, is that at times when you see an export receipt from South Africa for 5,000 for a certain year, it's not even there in the Chinese imports for that same year. $0. They've got an export receipt saying 50,000, but in the Chinese import, there's nothing. Nothing. So that's quite very sad. And you ask yourself, what could be happening? So that's how you calculate your trade mis-invoicing. You're saying, what have they sent to us? Let's adjust for cost of freight insurance. And then we find the difference. The difference now is what has been mis-invoiced. So you'd find out, that there are so many methods of doing this. What I've just said to you now is what is known as the partner country trade gap method. So we just get this data from the UN Comtrade, and then we just juxtapose exports and imports. There's one that I would wish to do, but unfortunately, we have been very good at hiding data in the African setup. So if you want to know something that is very expensive is data, especially on trade. Because remember, the original, the first method is at national level. So you don't see companies there. You just see the country that's trading, the HS code, the product, and the final value. Now, the method that I am trying to push to get data gives me the CD1 forms to say, okay, this is the export receipt as indicated by Zimplats to sending this to South Africa, Zimplats Zimbabwe to. So I've got the price, I've got the quantity. So like I said, it's manipulation of the price or the quantity. So as we discuss this, the perpetrators realize, no, let's not be worried about the quantity. Let's be worried about the price. Because if I sell my car to him at 5 rand, it's our agreement that he is willing to buy it at 5 rand. But this is not as private as you want to say it, because it's got a lot of national interest at heart. So if I can get micro thread, it's easy for me to say, okay, the price of chrome on this day was $53 US per ton. But you've declared 23. The difference is just too much. Or you've declared 55 out of 23. The difference is too much. So those are just the methods of us trying to find out how that. I'll try to move fast here such that. So this speaks to the second essay of the drivers, and we use what is known as the pooled mean approach. It's an econometric approach. I didn't want to bore you with those equations, but should you want them, they are readily available, and I'm not proud to say this, there are about 23 of them, such that at one time we thought probably just getting the drivers only is good enough contribution for a PhD. But the supervisors were saying, no, we need to tell a story and not just plug it to everyone. We need to tell a story. Let's get the magnitudes, the drivers, and the impact. So this is quite a lot. What sets this apart with every one of these studies is that the propounders of illicit financial flows looked at total mis-invoicing. So how do you calculate total mis-invoicing? You've got your import mis-invoicing and your export mis-invoicing, and you bring them together like that. And we said, no. These are two different concepts that happen differently. So you can't bring them together. We need to see the trades from the export side. We need to see the trades from the import side. So we split that apart. So you'd find out that we would change the dependent variable. At one time, it's the financial system and total mis-invoicing. And then the next model is export mis-invoicing and the financial system development. That's why they actually had to grow that, the size of that. So what did we get when we tried to see, or when we calculated the magnitude of trade mis-invoicing in South Africa? I said we had 5 countries, but for the sake of me trying to be a magician to present something that I did over 5 years, in 30 minutes I just said I'll report for South Africa for interest sake. But should you want a printout of their reports and the statistics, they are available, and they can be always be available. So I just got 71 for South Africa. Precious stones, the most substantial is export anti-mis-invoicing. Export anti-invoicing. So what does it mean? It means exactly when I said, if this is worth 200 US, I declare it as 2 US because it will fetch a value on the other side of the river. So you are under-declaring to benefit on the other side of the river. And that has got an implication on how then you do your royalties, because you would have declared probably a smaller margin of profit. Then export over invoicing and export over invoicing and import invoicing. It's quite huge, and at times it's quite dangerous. Let me put it that way, to kind of like give this kind of information in a forum like this one. I'm happy that the security is quite tight here. So these are the findings. The findings on the estimates. We wanted also to see, who are you trading with? In this, who's your partner? And as you can see, we've got friends from the east. We also got friends from the west, and we've got friends from Asia. So these are, after calculating, this is not export and import invoices, this is trade mis-invoicing. After calculating that, we went deeper and said, okay, fine, for this mis-invoicing that we see, who is constituting more? And this is how it comes over these concepts. So immediately after estimating, we move to what is driving. And I apologize again. In terms of what is driving, I tried again to put it in as short as I can, but I think I will be able to give as much information to ignite debate, or to ignite a line of thought. So there is theory by economic growth theorists that says a good financial system should spur growth. Fair? If you've got a very good financial system, you should prepare for growth. But it seems what we found out is that we are wearing a size 9 shoe, but our toes are quite very small to fit even half the shoe. What am I trying to say? It seems the financial system has grown faster than the rate at which we are growing, such that those that are smarter and clever and have power are manipulating the system to benefit, to align their pockets. So the growth of the financial system, though good, we now probably need to look further to say, so what's the threshold per country to say, I think at this growth of a threshold, I think this should work out right. So in terms of total mis-invoicing and the financial system development, we realized that the shadow economy is actually one of the propellers of this. And now, when we look at what is driving, we shift from those 5 countries and open it up larger to about 23 countries, African. So this is based not only on those 5, but now based on the 23. So this is what we find in terms of financial system development. Alone, it will not be able to provide a solution to curb mis-invoicing. So as you can see, total mis-invoicing has got a negative relationship with growth. Sorry. Right. So, like I said, we split total, export, and import. These are the results from your export side, where we feel that this is where we're actually losing more, because we are ideally just exporters as Africans. And if we can probably have proper institutions, politically and economic, which is the control of corruption, government effectiveness, and one that is always a problem is accountability and availability of information. So in essence, we buttress the results that we found earlier on to say mis-invoicing is actually a concept that we need to put through. But what's actually much more important is the governance side of it that we need to worry about. So now, from the import side, this is what we get. Financial deepening, having as many products in terms of the financial system as possible. That alone will not be able to resolve this problem that we have. So what do we need to do? What comes out clear in all those models or in all these results is that you need both a good financial system and strong institutions, political and economic. You need to that's the interaction part that I was saying. We interacted them, which means we wanted to see the joint impact of them together, not separately. So we need them to come together. We need them to find each other. And there's something that I just probably need to just pass through. Why are we worried about the financial system? Ideally, I was very angry, I think 3 weeks or 4 weeks back, when I know this doesn't sit well with a lot of people, especially my countrymen, when there was a history of transactions that were done by a certain individual that implicated the electoral body and that. And the news only came 2 years down the elections, and we were asking ourselves, so how useful is this? But what I'm saying now is that the financial system's role in this is to flag these payments real time. To say as soon as something is fishy, the system is supposed to actually detect this. We're not supposed to actually be talking about this. It's supposed to be picked from the system, then the institutions start working to correct that. So that's why I just thought I need to emphasize why the financial system is of essence to us. Let me see if I still have much more time, but so we had 2 pillars, remember, institutions and the financial system. These are the results for the institutions, which actually are just buttressing the same concept to say, without clear, strong institutions, whatever we are trying to curb in terms of mis-invoicing will not be successful. So these are the results from total mis-invoicing and institutions. This is now export mis-invoicing and institutions. And what comes also out clear is that it's a complex situation. It's a complex world. It's not a one-size-fits-all. And for instance, it would be prudent that every other country has their own measurement of trade mis-invoicing. If it can be weekly, that's better. We know that in this week, yes, fine, this is what we've done, but this is what has been lost. I was going to ask if there could be more of this, because when I tried to use data that had been done before by Professor Ndikumana, he spat at me. He said, no, you're a PhD student. Go and do your own data. I won't do that for you. So he had done it to a certain period. And I can tell you now, it's only GFI, Global Financial Integrity, and his statistics. Those are the people that are only reporting this. So if there could be some way of us producing this on a daily basis, whether per sector, per country, per product, excuse me, naturally, it actually work better for us. So these are the summaries. We were worried that probably after a lot of campaigning for this, it had slowed down, but it seems nothing has changed, actually going further. which means export mis-invoicing still remains one of the key drains of economic growth and development in Africa. Then the financial system and development alone, it being perfect, it being important, cannot resolve this. It cannot resolve this. Then broad money and private sector credit was for us trying to use a different proxy to capture the issue of the financial system development. Same as bank liquidity. It was just us trying to be as robust as we can to say, let's use all that. Then, like I've said, the shadow economy, it shows that, yes, without, you know that a shadow economy means it's a black market, right? So without proper institutions, the black market grows. So as it grows, it's stealing from the formal sector. So you'd find out that the shadow economy has to be properly managed. And how do you do that? You improve your institutions. Once institutions are clear, you kill it silently. Strong governance and institutional quality. So the other issue was not about just the institutions, but the quality now. You find out the institutions we have. I was happy the other day when we were discussing about what the United Nations has done, and someone stood and said, they've done this, and we are happy that they've done something. But now the issue is of what quality is it? Is it something that we can use to do this? Are we even using it? So that's about that. So what comes quite often, weak institutions, weak political and economic institutions. And I had hoped that I would say this last. How do we seal? How do we do this? How do we change the direction? It's unfortunate again that I might say this, and I'm sorry this, and please, today I'm wearing an academic hat. Once I walk out of there, I'll tell you that I didn't say this. It's unfortunate that the key players of this, number one, are your multinationals. Because trade is never done at a national level, it's at a company level. So if you then ask yourself, who's moving this, you will now need to go to the multinational companies. And who enables the multinational companies? This is where I now need proper security. It's the political elites. And you find out that half the time, if you want to go to DRC, if you want to go to South Africa, if you want to go to Gambia, if you want to go to Mozambique, at the center of it all are the political elites. Those that have power, that even if there's a ban for gold, their gold is still sold. Even if someone is caught with a 9 kg in their bag, they still get away with it. So the elites, I don't know how I'm sorry, I don't mean to go personal, but I don't know how we can encourage our friends to just meet the social contract without deviating from their promises. So these are the remedies that we can try and do that are within our reach. We now need to strengthen the quality of institutions. Financial regulation is key. Once someone gets flagged, no exemptions. If you're caught with this and this is it, you must go down. And I like the stance that has been adopted in South Africa recently, where we have seen what has been going on in the political fraternity, where if you have got something to answer, you must excuse yourself and go answer. Formalize the shadow economy. This is also unique in the mineral sector particularly, because you see that most of the African economies, especially in the mining sector, has been opened up for small players. So in the small player section, you now need to you now need to make sure that you formalize whatever activities they are doing there. You make them part of the system. The moment they remain outside the system, it remains an enabler of inequality. Leverage resource governance. There's something that I proposed. I didn't mean to say this again. There's something that I proposed before Trump started his Trump economics. And I was saying the other way to stop the bleed at a national level is to make the declarations or make these organizations that mine pay part of their royalty as a commodity. If it's 5% royalty, let's have 2% or 50% of that 5% as a commodity. In that way, the government is also a player. And I know we'll fight as academics about this because you're saying the government is a player and also a referee. But the United States is doing it. The United States government has got stockpiles. If they are doing it, why can we not do it? I'm just trying to say, let's leverage on what should we prioritize? The regulations, the regulations, the regulations. Regional cooperation is also very important. And I would have loved that as SADC, I noticed now we've got more like a unit within AU that deals with minerals. That's very, very, very encouraging. But I would have probably proposed that we expedite this and have more of regional cooperation. The data that South Africa has on Zimbabwean imports, it's shared across the borders, and that way it serves the greater people of Africa. With that, allow me to have said a lot. If I stepped on someone, I'm sorry. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Luke. I really think we can give him another round of applause. One for courage, one for content, one for his presentation, his empathy into all of this, and the way that he has engaged us in a very topical yet political sensitive issue. So thank you once again. You have set the bar very high. On this note, I would like to invite our two panelists to join us. If I may abuse my chair as the program director, I'm going to switch around the program somewhat because one of our panelists I've heard had some time constraints. So Dr. Ndo is gracing us with his presence, but online we have Professor Patrick Bond, and I'm going to allow him to now present us with his comments first. But please let me just quickly brush over a few of the items on his very elaborate and impressive bio. Professor Bond is a distinguished professor of sociology, specializing in political economy, ecology, and social mobilization. He served at the Western Cape School of Government and was a distinguished professor at the University of Witwatersrand. He was also a senior professor at the University of KwaZulu-Natal, directing the Center of Civil Society. He has held visiting positions at various universities, including Gyeongsang National University in Korea, and the Leeuwenhoek City Centre at the University of Manchester. And he was a visiting scholar at UC Berkeley and York Universities, all based in the USA. So Professor Bond founded the doctoral program at the Wits School of Governance and lectured at over 100 universities worldwide. So I would like to say first and foremost, thank you, Professor Bond, for gracing us, and we are very much looking forward to your comments on our very proud, we are proud of him, Dr. Luke Mupen-Shagatu. Thank you. We can't hear you. Professor Bond? Is it on our side? You are muted, Professor Bond. You see my age group, so you are excused. Still no sound. Isn't it supposed to be unmuted? He's not muted, it's on our side. I saw you. There we go.
I think the problem might be the microphone
Thank
on your
you.
side.
Yes, we've got you now. Thank you so much.
You can hear me now.
Yes, we
Is that
can.
right?
If you may start again, please.
Okay, you can hear me. Is that correct?
Absolutely,
fantastic.
yes. The floor is yours.
Now, is it possible to share some slides that simply expand upon a few of the areas? Because I completely agree with Luke. What I'd like to do is to share this screen and just give you some slides that I also have a background paper to provide if it's useful. And it takes us forward from trade mis-invoicing. I'm just wondering, are you able to see this slideshow at the moment? It's called The Financing of Extractive Industries and the Perils of Liberalization and Mining Finance Diversification. Is that available to you? You can see the slides?
Thank you. We can see it very well. Thank you.
Okay. Well, first, thank you, everyone, for allowing me into your space. And I'm sorry I'm not there in Pretoria. What I'd like to do is just thank Luke for all of these very impressive sealing the leaks suggestions, because without question, the underdevelopment of South Africa is being amplified not only by the structure of the economy in which the extractive industries, some will call it the minerals energy complex, the extractive industries are looting South Africa, the main point I want to make today. But the financial sector is exacerbating this. I just want to very quickly show you what looting looks like. Is everybody able to see the screen from last November's World Bank Changing Wealth of Nations report? If some of you are familiar with the extractive industries and the way in which not just trade mis-invoicing, but the depletion of non-renewable resource mis-invoicing occurs, this is the single worst part of Africa's underdevelopment. And it occurs in low-income countries at such a formidable rate that even the World Bank, with a very partial analysis, because it does not include very crucial minerals in the database, platinum group metals, manganese, chrome, where South Africa is the leader, zirconium, vanadium, titanium, where they're the second leader, and diamonds. And for many African countries, Botswana, Namibia, Zimbabwe, for diamonds, not even having those data make this an extreme underestimate of the problem. And the non-renewable natural capital depletion that the World Bank talks about, what is that? That's simply, we dig out minerals that are not replacing themselves. If you dig out maize from Zimbabwe that Rhodesians had planted, and then you get rid of the Rhodesians through Jambanja, through the land reform, then you're not losing much more than the century of the land being slightly degraded. But when you take out platinum or gold, under where I am, Johannesburg, half of the world's historic gold at one point, then you're taking away something that can't be replaced. And I want to very quickly go into the environmental economics of this sort of mis-invoicing. For poor countries, 60% of the non-renewable natural capital, the underlying natural resources, has been depleted over the period 1995 to 2020. It's really an extraordinary amount. That's on a per person basis, change in the wealth per capita for renewable natural capital, 44%. And then we go to lower middle income countries and upper middle. And what we begin to find in the upper middle income countries is that this isn't just Western imperialism of classic neo-colonial drawing out of minerals. There's also a sub-imperial middle layer in which South Africa fits, called the BRICS, because it's in Eastern Democratic Republic of the Congo until a few weeks ago when Donald Trump tried to get his claws into the $4 trillion out of $24 trillion of minerals there through the so-called peace deal, which we still are trying to get details on. But it's not just the US companies, but in this case, Chinese companies that have been involved when, for example, we look at our telephones, we look at the coltan or the cobalt, the lithium, that's coming from child labor in Chinese mines in the Eastern DRC. The extraction system, the unequal ecological exchange, is therefore both imperialist and sub-imperialist in character. The imperialist economies, especially when you think of Apple having the main profits from its research and development, its financing, its distribution, its marketing, the patents, all of the things that mean the profits mainly go to California. And it's that process that I think I'd love if UNISA, the Thabo Mbeki School, given President Mbeki's work in the AU and UNECA around the illicit financial flows, the problem I'm getting at is partly these are licit. They're, to some extent, mandated as part of the foreign direct investment that we all see. Investment. In the extractive industries. In the extractive industries. It's a source of impoverishment. So this is the basic World Bank data that is quite conservative. A better comes from Jason Hickel's team in supervisor in the House studied with David Harvey, and he's talking about a broader theoretical problem called overaccumulation of capital and the volatility of capitalism since the 1970s can be understood as said is that you move the problem fix and through financial the future through the credit system, right? You can and therefore not but pay later. That's called a fix. But these are, and as a result, not only the imperialist powers that are part of the crisis of capitalism, increasingly what might be called, as David Harvey, sub-imperialism. Each developing center of capital accumulation, its own systematic spatio as they move capital. And the Belt Initiative is only the most obvious African capital moving out of Africa since liberation, for example. My own theory of bias comes from Karl Marx, but particularly improvements that Rosa Luxemburg. She described how accumulation periodically births crises, and the continuous and progressive disintegration of non-capitalist relations makes accumulation of capital possible through colonialism. So her attempt to build out Marx, which was an internal logic of the commodity production and distribution, exchange, and financial crisis tendencies, adds the non-capitalist because she studied South Africa, read John Hobson, read some of the other writers, and understanding, therefore, more than Marx, who was mostly concerned with surplus value in labor. She, well, there's a battle of against every historical economy, and she could see reading how or some of the Saul Platchey, some of the other writers of her era describe the migrant labor system, which takes especially the social reproduction costs of labor and puts those onto women in the Bantustans. But in addition, the most important of productive forces that capital takes is the land, mineral treasure, woods and water. Eco-socialist right early on, and capital, he says, begins with the systemic destruction and annihilation of all the non-capitalist units. Now, the tendency in capitalism is to overproduce, and we're seeing that implied in the north, in the west, with the in the rates of profit, and that's very well documented. But this now also is where systems were moved first from the to places like areas of Mexico, and then to the east coast of China, and now other sites where production occurs, even where there are sweatshops. But the problem at the most side of overcapacity, which is China, where roughly 50% of the industrial economy surplus, meaning with the United States, and now putting on a 40. We're going to be huge dumpers. We've already seen that. The International Trade Administration Commission, run by Ayabonga Tawe, is responding with major new tariffs against China, but it's probably not enough to the destruction of South Africa. And we've all clothing and textiles and food and electronics. So overcapacity as a overaccumulation measure is pretty obvious. Chris and I have worked quite a bit on the rates of capital accumulation intensity because it comes to declining profit. Often there's an attempt to intensify the capital is to have a higher organic composition capital, that is more machines, and we've been seeing tendencies in overaccumulation in an economy from the 80s and a resurgence in the early years. The problem then is witnessed in deindustrialization, where South Africa has been absolutely devastated, having 4% manufacturing to GDP to 12.5%. The BRICS an alternative operating assumption, even I would guess by many of the room, because the West is imperialist and unfair. Therefore, we need and the BRICS offers opportunity. But I must carefully at the Rio Declaration early this month, but also I'm going to Kazan Declaration, very similar. The BRICS are still liberalism, with a system with multilateral trade, WTO at the core, and an enhanced authority for finance with an adequately resourced IMF. That means BRICS taxpayers are spending much more money to give the IMF more capital, an increased participation of the emerging and developing in leadership. And if you look at the last time, 2015, increased its share of the IMF 37, Brazil 23, India 11, and Russia 8%. But those BRIC economies rose, but others lost their relative shares. In Venezuela, most powerful, declining voice in and even South Africa losing percent. The next part of this is just that we are in a position 20 hosting it where a catastrophe is because the judging anything that might be genuine reform, and the G20 premier with an alliance of the BRICS and the G7, that is the imperialist powers in the G7 and the sub-imperial, and that's what G20. By everything that's happening, G20, imperial and sub alliance against people in the world, but it's difficult because Donald Trump is not attending. He's sabotaging. So when you look at the AU and you look at the 20 members who were brought in 2008, all of the countries brought in into it was really to bolster financial decay and to time of the big 2007 to 2009 financial crisis to boost the financial capability, especially of Saudi and China. G7, and he expanded BRICS, especially countries like Indonesia this year, and the UAE, Egypt, and Ethiopia, and having joined last year. BRICS have come in a way that, to the topic, is illicit financial volatility, which can be felt through the Standard & Poor's in the BRICS credit ratings, and extremely poor. Only the China, India, and Indonesia having sovereign ratings, whereas the rest of them, all 6 others, having either junk or unrated. And that partly reflects the fear of default. The most recent defaults were about 1985, 1987, 1998, Russia, after the financial sanctions were imposed on the West, and Ethiopia in 2023. So when I see a picture like this, obviously Joe Biden has been replaced, or are there the leading managers meet in 2023 and plan out how development would change the G20 and the bank to certainly warn about them. His name's AJ Bonga, because if you look at what he did in Soweto, it was entirely predatory as a MasterCard with his strategies, which led some of much better than 17 million people by cash paymaster services led by the man in the cartoon, Serge Bellamont, until Blackstone rose up and killed cash paymaster services in September 2020 to close down a corporate death sentence for polluting that the World Bank, which is a major shareholder in servers, and Bellamont were doing. And here, when you look at what Cyril Ramaphosa has proposed in terms of the extractive industry finance that is dominant in the climate finance in extracting non-renewables, a lot of rhetoric about community to have financial institutional development banks, the post-disaster recovery. Yet the G20 has been a failure. What with and 2021 expansion, it should have just been a short-term ban on debt when at the time Zambia and later Ghana, and more recently, these were countries that in the 2010s were great. They were, running between 5 and 10% GDP increase. So we've had no movement in debt sustainability. The commodity prices crashed across the world from May 2022, and then the Federal Reserve from early 2022 to 20 put up the interest rate that we need. De-dollarization is the Fed has that power to quantitative easing, print money one day, and then raise the interest rate, causing chaos for all of us. There's been, think of Durban on August 12, 2020, that killed 500 people and 5 billion rand of damage. There's been no reparations payment, even though last week the International Court of Justice recommended that there be climate debt recognized. And then we have the financial dropping their environmental governance reform. Trump has come into power, imposing tariff Friday, 30% attack on South Africa. And then we've also had US aid putbacks. Now, PEPFAR may be put back part, but in the meantime, we've lost masses of jobs and access to medicines in area USA in excelling in, but it all emergency food and for climate. We're in a disastrous situation, and the G20 is some rhetoric, and it's already walked away from corporate taxation. The name Trevor Manuel has come up. I don't find Manuel convincing as someone who will the debt, and the reason is he's the chair of Old Mutual and the deputy chair of Rothschild. Both of those institutions have major portfolio investments in African sovereign debt, and I don't think he's going to work against his financial interests in doing genuine debt relief. You will not hear climate debt. You will not hear odious debt, corrupt debt from Trevor Manuel. He's been part of, he was and in 2009 he was $150 billion recommended by a committee that he chaired, that the need for all of this area, de-dollarization, just not happening. There's no real BRICS currency move or central bank cyber currency. A little bit of trade finance, meaning you don't necessarily need the dollar. And when you have a trade imbalance, like China does with nearly everyone, or India does with Russia, then the whole operation falls apart because you need an international reputable currency. And regrettably, it's the dollar. We all would love to see de-dollarization. Me, because I used to work in the Federal Reserve, and I know that quantitative easing and raising the interest rates are brutal. The new institutions of the BRICS are a great disappointment. New Development Bank, just like the World Bank, but more corrupt. I've documented this in great detail. There's supposedly a reserve arrangement as an alternative to the IMF, but it's never appeared. In South Africa, in 2020, went to the IMF for a $4.3 billion loan. Regrettably, it was the finance minister, the late Tito Mboweni, who was, whatever reason, not wanting to go to the BRICS, but instead to the IMF with the kind of austerity conditions that we're all suffering. A BRICS credit rating agency, often advertised from 2015 onwards, never has appeared. And the reforms in the existing financial system, including capitalization of the Bretton Woods institutions, that IMF that I showed you, the personnel deployed into the Bretton Woods, and the ideology that the BRICS delegates take into the Bretton Woods, they're all just the same. They are truly sub-imperial. And you don't have to take it from me. There's a man called Pablo Batista. Paulo Batista used to be the BRICS New Development Bank vice president. And before that, he was Brazil's representative at the IMF. And he'll tell you everything I've just said is correct. And so when you get Donald Trump screaming about the need to de-dollarize, if you leave the dollar, you're not doing business with the United States. We're put 100% tariff. I hate when countries go off the dollar. He said this 9 times, most recently, just the day after the BRICS final meeting. But when you look at actually whether there is any de-dollarization, I think Pepe Escobar talking about how Vladimir Putin described this challenge, we're in no hurry to de-dollarize. To have a single currency would be premature. We need to agree greater integration of the economies and increase the quality of the economies. And then the bombshell quote, we never wanted to abandon the dollar. So even the one with the most incentive, Russia, along with Iran, that have been kicked out of the SWIFT interbank system, are not moving in this direction. Let me conclude with a few slides that just reflect how ecologically, the unequal ecological exchange, the extraordinary destruction, which I don't think are on your agenda, I think they should be, because of the damage being done. These are not measured in GDP. The people who put together gross domestic product, led by Simon Kuznets, a white American male, didn't give a damn about depletion of non-renewable resources, or about pollution, or about greenhouse gas emissions, or about unpaid labor. GDP is useless for us in South Africa and in Africa because it ignores those 4 characteristics which are part and parcel of Africa's underdevelopment. And you can go through the slides, I'll send these along, but the natural resource depletion, that is, we're under a 0% for what's called adjusted net savings, the worst being in coal, because it also means when you burn it, you're creating massive climate change. And of course, you have to add that Patrice Motsepe, the president's brother-in-law, and Glencore are making lots of profits from exporting coal to fuel the genocide of Israel against Palestine. So we get adjusted net savings, which is a measure that the World Bank uses with the flaws I've already mentioned. In other words, this is a very conservative measure, but it still puts South Africa in a negative territory once you include not just GDP income from production of goods and services, but you also then decline by natural capital and pollution, and you factor in non-paid labor. And that's why we can come up with a chart, as I said, conservative, which shows such extraordinary looting of poor countries, which I don't think anyone in the Thabo Mbeki school, or not too many people at UJ, even with our very good progressive economics department, have clued up on yet. So I'm hoping I'm wrong, and you'll tell me that you are aware of this sort of looting. The other part of the looting that's so crucial, you could see Jacob Zuma, known as a looter in many ways, but particularly agreeing with Barack Obama and 3 of the other BRICS leaders, Russia wasn't there, that we would have 3 basic approaches to the climate. And one is to not cut emissions or leave fossil fuels in the ground sufficiently to preserve life as we know it, to preserve the planet. Secondly, never to admit climate debt, never to acknowledge liability for having polluted. And thirdly, to privatize the air, to have the carbon markets and the emissions trading and the offsets do the work instead of cutting emissions. And these are the, let's say, the features of what South Africa and these other economies as major emitters, what they share in common. That is the G20 combining the G7 and the BRICS and a few others as maximum emitters. So I don't have to go through all the slides for you, but we're doing the data, looking at the climate debt. And if we put it at $1,056 a ton, it is a formidable climate debt. Others even say $3,000 a ton. These are the sorts of things, when you look at the huge emissions of South Africa, that we think should be included in to make sure that we're greening the question of illicit financial flows, because so much in profits are taken from the major emitters. Just think of the biggest single emitters, Eskom, but Sasol as a private sector, BHP Billiton, which uses 7% of our electricity, they get it at 30 cents per kilowatt. That's an eighth of what you and I, and they're emitting and polluting and taking the profits to Melbourne, Australia, and not even giving discounts on the aluminium locally here. So these have some of the processes which we think financiers are pressed to acknowledge depletion and stranded high carbon asset abilities, because climate actions from the European Union and the UK are looming. It's a border adjustment mechanism. And if you look at the kind of problems we're having in trying to discipline the group called Just Share, which looks, and even the Reserve does look at the extent to which banks are exposed to climate risk. It's a formidable problem, right? So I'll send all of this along and hope that they will persuade you to join when we have. And the Reserve Bank, I'm afraid, since we're grey listed, suggesting the Reserve Bank does a very good job on illicit finance and definitely not a good job on regulating these appalling contributions from the financial sector to the looting of Africa. So we have to leave it up, I think, to the people. That's Kumi Naidoo, former head of Amnesty International and Greenpeace, at a big protest at Standard Bank, which is the bank that is most sub-imperial and most climate destructive. So I think that's the way we're going to have to go, seeing people like Kumi arrested and movements across Africa, across the world protest. But I must be frank, we as academics, we don't do a very good job, even with such great people at the Reserve Bank as our host, and even with the kinds of concerns everyone in the House has as good South African citizens, as African citizens concerned about the looting, we're losing. We need a lot more militancy, what we would call for a G20 from below, based on the model called BRICS from below. We'd call for delinking, that is, defaulting on unpayable and especially debt. Think of the loans the world to Eskom, which they knew were corrupted. Vali Musa as the 7 chair of Eskom and sitting on the ANC Finance Committee. That was under President Mbeki, and I'm sure he knew that there was an extraordinary case of corruption, probably South Africa's worst. So booting out the World Bank, as did Ecuador's President Rafael Correa, using exchange controls. The Reserve Bank here is deregulated and loosened exchange controls on dozens of accounts, and that's part of the problem, I think, of our illicit financial flows. Those would be the sorts of alternatives, without having a lot more time to go into them, that I think we need. So normally I go through why ideologically it's difficult, why by being in the G20, South Africa is part of an imperial, sub-imperialist alliance. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Professor Bond, for giving us this very rich perspective on illicit financial flows that are tormenting Africa, and you have most definitely highlighted a very important aspect of it, and just emphasizing the need to really dig in and understand the various components and the monster that we are actually dealing with, and the need for academics to step up and start researching this and using their voices. Next up will be our next panelist, and I'm going to ask him to join us here with Dr. Luke. Luke, if you can come back to the seat up front, please. You and Dr. Eliphas Ndo. And while they are approaching the front, let me just give a brief. Grateful that our neighbors are joining us today, and he is our neighbor, public finance. He also taught part-time at the University of Witwatersrand, and he was for 11 years. Dr. Ndo has published numerous articles on international journals, authored 13 books on topics like international finance and macroeconomics, and contributed to Elsevier's Encyclopedia in Monetary Policy. Additionally, he provides economic commentary on multiple media platforms. Please, let's welcome him with a warm hand of appreciation for his travel to give his remarks. Thank you. Ask Professor, are you still online?
Yes, I am.
Okay,
if
wonderful.
you have any questions or debates, I'm happy to.
Questions that will be coming your way. Thank you.
Look forward to it.
Okay, thank you very much, and I would like to thank Dr. Tafadzwa for the good presentation. I would also like to thank Prof. Bond for also bringing the issue of the cost of emissions, which is an environmental concern, especially regarding the climate change. Right. So, it's a very interesting topic at a very opportune moment for South Africa, the issue of trade invoicing. And I think it has not been given much publicity as far as I'm concerned, because if we have to understand the issue of currency invoicing, we have to put it in the context of South Africa. Currently, if you go back to the budget, there are big pressing issues. So what I'll do, I'll take over from where Tafadzwa ended there. It was the issue of economic growth, because from what he found that he found out a very interesting finding here, which I did ask him to confirm to me, which was what are the biggest drivers of economic growth from his modeling here. And he told me that he told me trade mis-invoicing has a bigger effect than inflation, which was a very surprising finding. That trade invoicing has a bigger impact on economic growth than inflation. And currently, if you can remember about South African economic issues, there is a need, as South African Reserve Bank said, lowering the inflation target band to 3%. So if currency invoicing has got a bigger impact, an adverse one, why is it not given so much attention? And yet the inflation one is given more attention here. So when I was doing my reading in the literature, trade mis-invoicing contributes about 77% to illicit financial flows. And the other remainder of about 23%, they say is hot money flows. So I will not go into the discussion concerning the definitions or the measurements of this. Then, as I've said about the budget this year has been one of the pressing issues. 3 times it went through the parliamentary processes here. And remember about African countries, if they've talked before about the Trump economics, most of African countries, they depend on foreign development aid, which is official development assistance. So when I go through the literature, a number of ratios came into my mind. And one of them was, what is the ratio of what is the ratio of trade mis-invoicing to official development assistance? So if the ratio is more than 100, what does that mean? Do we need to depend on development assistance from abroad? Not necessarily so, because from the literature that I've read, the ratio of illicit financial flows to ODA, which is official development assistance, is about 151.9%. So which means if trade mis-invoicing is handled and attended to properly, we don't need to rely on development assistance. Also, the literature also looks at the ratio between illicit financial flows. Here I'm using an aggregate term here, which comprises trade mis-invoicing as well as the hot money flows here. That ratio is also about 186.2%, which means if we can have systems in place that address the issues of trade mis-invoicing, we could be having a lot of development within our countries here. I'm saying this based on the studies that were done by the Africa Tax Administration Forum. And when you also look at the effects from South African budget, the big item there concerning the funding is the public debt to GDP ratio. So if we can get the right data on the currency, on the trade, I'm talking about currency invoicing because I did some work on currency issues. So on the trade mis-invoicing, and divide that by the debt, I think we're going to get a very interesting number. Unfortunately, I didn't see the numbers on the trade mis-invoicing as well as the debt ratio. I think it's going to be a very interesting statistic to look at. And currently, South Africa is also dealing with the issues of infrastructure backlog. I think we can get a lot of money if we deal with issues of trade invoicing here. Unfortunately, Tafaza did not show the numbers that he had, because it was going to be very interesting. We need to know, are we dealing with a thing that should be given much attention or less attention? But from the empirical analysis, it shows trade mis-invoicing, it needs to be given a bigger attention. Otherwise, the issues that we have wouldn't be there. The issue of social grants, the threat of them being removed from the budget and affecting a larger population of the country, they couldn't be there. And as I'm explaining further here, I got deep into the implication of his finding in his study here, that trade mis-invoicing has a significantly larger effect on GDP. This finding, it has got implication for our fiscal metrics. Remember, the debt to GDP ratio is a metric that is being used by the rating agencies. So if the denominator, I'm saying debt over GDP, if the denominator GDP becomes smaller, the ratio becomes much bigger. And this comes with cost in servicing the debt, which means the riskiness of the country has even become much worse. So his findings have got very bigger and broader implications here. And remember, the Minister of Finance, he said he's trying to stabilize debt to GDP ratio. Wow, he also wanted to have a primary surplus. That is the difference between what he gets as revenue and what he spends out should be positive. So when GDP becomes weaker, it also implies your revenue also becomes much weaker. So the prospect or the probability of him achieving a primary surplus, which is also needed to improve the fiscal metrics as well as to lower the cost of servicing the debt, it also becomes a complex process altogether. So it's very important that his finding of currency mis-invoicing can also be an issue that can be used for discussion with the fiscal authority. I think it's one of those findings which is not given much of the publicity that it deserves. In addition, as I've talked about the implication on the fiscal metrics here, I will also explain the implications for our high unemployment rate in South Africa here. Weak economic growth, which means less employment opportunities are being created. And when less employment opportunities are being created, we're going to have a big problem of unemployment. And mostly it affects the youth who are getting into the market. So with rising unemployment, we're going to have a problem of rising discouraged workers. And this becomes a social issue. That's why I'm saying the finding of a negative effect of trade mis-invoicing on economic growth is a very important one that policymakers need to take cognizance of it. I also bring in, as Prof. Bond has said here, the issue of monetary policy. I have just hinted here that there is a discussion that is being led by the central bank about the changing of inflation target band. So if currency, if trade mis-invoicing is having a big impact on economic growth, it's lowering economic growth, and when economic growth becomes weaker, less people are employed, there's a high unemployment rate, and the demand pressures that come from lower economic growth, they are weakened, which has got implication for weaker inflationary pressures. So what do we say? Is it the right time for the central bank to lower the target band? Is it an opportune time for them? This raises a very big question regarding how should the central bank interact with South African revenue services in trying to deal with the issues of trade, mis-invoicing here, and the implication for also the change of the inflation target band. It's now calling for that coordination of policy, which may not have been at a stronger level, is needed now here. Because with that coordination, we'll be able to understand if he can also take his study further to say what are the impacts of trade mis-invoicing on inflationary pressures in these countries that they've studied. It also shed light onto the role of target band. Is trade mis-invoicing also a driver of inflation in South Africa? Because remember, from 2009, the debt trajectory of the country was upward from around 28 or 29 to around now around 70 something, around 75 somewhere, if I can remember some numbers. And the currency also weakened over that period. I think from around 8 rand to US dollar to around now around maybe 18. So you can see there was a trend depreciation of the rand per US dollar. Is the trade mis-invoicing also contributing to this? Because from the numbers that I saw from the PhD thesis that he sent me, it seems that not very huge, but we need to know. We have time to add them so that I can see some things that I wanted to look at. So that's all what I have to say concerning the role of invoicing on economic growth. And then it also another big issue. How do we see this thing going forward given the African continental area? Is it going to be a big issue when that comes in place? So the studies, they should also be shop. Okay, thanks.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ndo. And I think you can give him another a round of applause for his very to the and very relevant observations with the broader impacts, etc., of trade mis-invoicing. It is now the time to open the floor for questions and answers. Assume we have a available. In order to do that, I'm just going to ask the following to organize the proceedings as follows. Just put up your hands. I think we're going to take, Luke, how would you like to go about this? Take 4 or 5 questions. Would that be fine for you? Okay, so we're going to take 4 or 5 questions from the floor, and depending on how many burning questions there are, we'll move to the online participants, and I have to then be guided by the team, the technical team, to actually deal with the various comments and the questions that may be coming online. Okay, by show of hand, can you indicate to me who would like to ask a question, whether it be to Dr. Luke or the panelists, even Professor Bond or Dr. Ndo? You are welcome to raise your hands. Number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4. Anyone else for now? Number 5 in front, Professor Edith. Okay, please. You are welcome.
Oh, thank you very much.
Please also introduce yourself,
Hi.
your name and your affiliation, so that we know exactly, so that we can put you in context as well. Okay.
Oh, thank you very much for the insightful presentation. It's David Ngubuka, maybe research fellow, UNISA, HSRC, UJ, FITS, UP, all the status quo. Oh yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Esh, for awakening realities of today, the shocks of today. Yeah, the issue I wanted to reflect or ask is regarding the issue of, with the African Transformation Index. Normally, they use these things, the dimensions, the depth of this reality, with the issue of, the servicing of debt, which is currently, was mentioned that we are servicing the interest, not the exact debt. We are servicing the interest rate of debt, which is, beyond 400 billion. As the numbers shows or tell us, or seasonally, or is it adjusted? So, but my question was to understand, now, do we think this policy, the AFC, FTA, African Continental Free Trade, was it, or is it gonna be a policy that is gonna favor this mis-invoicing, or for diversification sake, or the export competitiveness sake? Is it the competition that makes this mis-invoicing to thrive with these realities? As we see, the AGOA is going to be expensive with these tariffs, or the upgrading of technology. Do we think 4IR is going to enforce the mis-invoicing? Or the human well-being, as we see many CEO take a lot of packages home. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I forgot to ask those who are asking their questions to please keep it short. Thank you. Number 2.
No, thank you very much, Program Director. Greetings to you all. My name is Given Matlobowane. I just want to thank the TM African School of Public and International Affairs to invite us here today to attend this significant seminar. The Acting Executive Director of TM African School, Prof. Paswan, I just want to say to you, what is going to make a South Africa a better nation is a platform like this, engaging and in bringing the challenge that this country is facing. I would just want to go quickly to Dr. Mupingashato. I don't know whether am I pronouncing my name well or not. But I must say congratulations, by the way. And the illicit financial flow is a global problem. And then the question that we must put on the table is that how are we going to prevent the illicit financial flow? Doctor, I think we need leadership. The leadership who are going to take the best of the best decision. But let me
Your
try
question?
to be, yes,
Please.
let me try to be briefly. I have only two simple questions for you, Doctor. How can we make sure that we as a continent, we are putting a right safeguard to prevent this illicit financial flow? And then in the last question, Doctor, do you think our policies and legal framework are strong enough to prevent this illicit financial flow? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Number 3 is in front here.
Thank you. Thank you, colleagues, for a very informative and eye-opening presentation. My name is Koliswa from TM School. Dr. Luke, in your summary, you mentioned weak institutions. And again, you raised the question, how can we stop bleeding or how can we seal the leaks? You mentioned priorities that we need to strengthen regulations. Now, I got confused in terms of when you speak about weak institutions, are you suggesting that there is no legislative arrangements guiding the discharge of your presentation, the details of your presentation, or are you suggesting that those that are trusted to discharge their responsibilities are not capacitated or display unwillingness to discharge their roles and responsibilities? What are you suggesting by weak institutions, given that you are also suggesting that or priority must be given to strengthen regulations? Thank you.
One of our deans in front, Ambassador.
Thank you. My name is Saleh Omar, Ambassador of the State of Eritrea. Let me first thank the panelists for the insightful briefings. Dr. Luke, your thoughts on your thought really exposes the concealed critical issue of trade of invoicing. You have said shadow economy show dual effects. What are these dual effects? And again, we agree that financial deepening, of course, may worsen mis-invoicing. But what is that? The shadow economy and inflation which that consistently increase mis-invoicing. I thank you.
And the next, number 5, is Professor Edith, our Executive Dean.
Hello? Yeah, thank you. My question is to Dr. Luke, and I want to thank all the presenters for such rich, powerful, insightful presentations around this issue, and it was very pleasant to also realize that trade mis-invoicing is actually a bigger problem that affects our economy. Dr. Luke, you talked about that multinational companies are the big problem in these outflows of finance, and it's our political elites that are actually enabling this process. And I see that, of course, multinational companies might be the problem, but without the participation of our political elites, this won't be possible, because it's them who should actually be preventing and protecting us from this. So what do we do? Because it's something, until the political elites are able to do something, there is nothing that we can do on the ground. If they are the ones, what do we do as ordinary citizens to make sure that we protect our resources and all these outflows? Because they are actually, for me, from the presentation, what I'm taking is that there is big participation from political elite, and I think you're rightfully so. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof. Edith. May I ask, Luke, would you like to respond to your first 5 questions? Or 6, if we count into?
Thank you. Thank you very much for the very interesting and very difficult questions. I will not pretend to be a genius, but I will try and use the information that we gathered in the research to try and answer. I'll try to answer the question on the competitiveness and the African and the AFTAT. So if you ask me my honest opinion about that agreement, it's unfortunate that it might not be okay with you. But recent developments have noticed that we are all trading goods. So I'm just wondering whose goods we are going to buy, because we are all selling goods. I hope this makes it clear. We as a region, we are basically selling each other gold, silver. The same gold that I have is the same gold that the other one has. So my worry is whose goods are going to be much more palatable than the other. Then the other thing is that in terms of that agreement, noble as it is, what is never explained is about its implementation. How does it work? The general agreement, from where I sit as an economist, is that over time, countries are supposed to cut off their tariffs across each other. And then if you want to consider how much revenue each government has been getting from these tariffs that are being cut off, you then wonder, where are we going to get the money to replace this chunk that we have gone without? So we need to do that. So where do we go from here? So without us looking at industrialization, how do we capacitate the industry? This policy might backfire. I'm happy that immediately after the chair of the SADC, current one, was told he's the chair, he tried to do an industrialization for Africa. I was hoping that that should have been cascaded to the private sector, because remember, trade is not about the government. The government is just money. It's just they're just observers. But the participants now are the private players. And as long as they don't buy it in, we are just probably having a very good book in the shelf that no one wants to read or no one knows it's there. And then, given us how we're going to prevent the illicit financial flows, how are we going to do it? Because it seems it's a very big problem. And you and me, we need to actually find a solution. But what we have so far is the recommendations that we've provided. And what have we said? The first thing is that it's amazing that the price per ton of copper is gazetted on a daily basis before trade happens. But it so happens that a sale will go through where that price of copper is way below the price that has been gazetted. So what we need to have is a software or a system that dictates the prices, especially. For now, that's what we can do. We can just monitor the prices. If the price is below what is within the arm's length, plus or minus 5%, then we need to flag and investigate why is this price below this. So that's one of the issues. And I think the global financial integrity has got such a tool, which is part of this government subs, which monitors that. You have sold platinum. Is this within the arm's length price? So in a way, that is one of the solutions. The other ones would probably be part of my answer to Prof. Edith. Key to this all, the reason why we are talking about this now, when we've been talking about it 2 centuries ago, is because of the political will. We are trying to push the player. We're trying to reduce the pocket alignments of the player. The participant is a political person. And you're saying, stop whatever you're doing. You're more like taking a little bit of income. You're taking away the comfort out of the person. So it means the willingness to actually resolve that is never part of what they want to do. But now, the next question is, oh, now we know that that's the case. Then what? The only other way is, you'd notice that the UNCTAD report, which was done by our patron, was actually dismissed left, right, and center. We need to, probably advocacy would do, but I have a feeling advocacy is not good enough. We need to, that's why I was proposing that, can we not have a public forum where we provide these figures quite frequently, quite oftenly, such that it's there. If someone is going to ask for it, it's publicly available. That's why I was trying to say, let's have a platform. Like I said, the data that we initially used was from Prof. Ndikumana. And when I tried to make him give me an extension, because it ended at 2015, I wanted to go to 2020, 2022. He says, no, I can't give you, go and calculate. If we can have those figures perennially, monthly, annually. So it found out the recent report about gold from the Swiss aid is actually saying the amount of gold that we're using as African countries is just too much. It is just too much. So what do we do? The report has been published. It's there. How do we make it circulate? So how do we impart it within our daily decision making? How do we make it part of what we talk about once in a while in a week? Would be part of the solution. But obviously, knocking on the doors of the politicians is also another solution. One might not listen, but the other might listen. I would probably say we could use the opportunity now where we've got a government of national unity. So everyone is trying to show the other one that is not, this one is not working. So what do? You give this one this card. He plays it and corrects that. The same way that we see what has been happening within the case of Commander Mkwananzi. Then you asked about, Kolisa Doc, you asked about the issue of weak systems, and you wanted to find out whether it's the legislation. Legislation will always be there. But now, because remember the recipient of this, there's an example that I brushed, but let me just bring that to emphasize what I wanted to put through. So at one time, Zimbabwe noticed that it is one of the African countries with quite an amount of lithium deposit. And it was just anyone that would just go and do my magic and sell it to whoever wants it. Then there was a ban. Immediately there was a ban to say no exports on lithium. But you'd be surprised. During that time when there's a national ban on lithium exports, if you go on Unicom Trade, you find the receipts are there. What I'm trying to point out is we've got the law, but as long as the law exists in absentia and not in, we have got a very prominent case that we always say. There is a close confidant of the president who was caught with an amount of gold, I think more than 9 kg in a purse, going to Dubai. She's walking scot-free now. I don't want to put names, but if you just Google Zimbabwean lady caught with an amount of gold at the airport. So their legislation is there. But what's not there is the will to enforce it. Why? Because the one who's supposed to flog half the time is part of the what? So you might have proper legislation, proper quality, but as long as that doesn't tie up to enforcement, then we've got a challenge. Then Ambassador Asada asked the dual effect of the shadow economy. So you'd notice that there's a marriage there. You have smuggled something into a certain country. So one thing that happens is that either the government has gone without, or what you've smuggled is going to enable something within that economy. I don't know if that makes sense. So there's a dual point of view. When you smuggle, the government loses, right? You've done away with a punch of it. But this is just not going not to sit somewhere. It's going to sit in some production line somewhere. So it usually, what we notice, it usually happens with situations where you've got governments that are not sitting well with the government in the governance indicators, where the political will is bad. So people have no option. It's a survival for the populace. So I'd rather come here and smuggle and make my family eat and do a business out of what I've smuggled. Yes, the government has lost something, but in terms of the economic activity, there's something that has gone further that could have not gone if this had not come through. So that's the dual effect we notice. Say, depending on the size of the economy now, you'd see that it would have different effects. Say at one time, it's quite very bad. On the other side, it's quite actually a solution to the masses. Then the issue of inflation. So you'd find out, we didn't do a causality test to say which one causes the other. But from what we got is that inflation kind of like erodes the value of basic commodities, making them very expensive in the domestic economy. So that then drives people to want to get these from elsewhere where it's cheaper. And they are not getting it through the proper means. So now you'd find out it then drives the volumes of the mis-invoicing. So I don't know if there is a question that I've not answered. If I've not answered, I'm sorry.
Thank you so much. Okay, we will give a follow-up. We will give a follow-up just now. I've been told there are no questions online, so we're going to take a second round of questions. We're going to start with the ambassador here in front. That's number 1. Number 2, Darlene, did you have your hand up for a question? Number 3, number 4, number 5, and number 6. Will you grace a number 6? Yeah, thank you. Okay, 6 questions in this round. Thank you. You may go, Ambassador.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Luke, for the response you have already given us. I want to know the perspectives that can help African countries, how they can improve in the trade, they can improve enforcement, of course, how they can improve their customs enforcement and the trade data analysis to combat trade invoicing. I thank you.
Thanks. I'm Professor Miller from the Thabo Mbeki School, and it's more of a comment than a question. That we tend to focus a lot in South Africa on the relationship between the state and its citizens. And I think over time there's been insufficient focus on corporate citizenship. So thank you for drawing our attention, our postdoc fellow, back to the issue of corporates. I think sometimes that there's a fear of being associated with the EFF, if you talk about white monopoly capital. But I don't think we must donate this issue to any one political party, because as citizens of South Africa, we are all affected by the power of white monopoly capital. These corporations, we had a G20 class, master class recently, where the political power of large economic corporates, the meetings that happened prior to the actual political events, the closed-door meetings, the behind-door meetings, the small room meetings that happen with large multinationals in this country. And currently, I believe, to respond to Prof. Paswana as well, that we need to focus attention as well on the B20, which is one of the key and lead stakeholders in the G20 process. 3 days prior to the G20, the Business 20 will be meeting, and in some ways we see the influence of global capital as well on the B20 process, because although Business South Africa is hosting it, the key corporations in the global B20, which is McKinsey and Bayer, and so we need to focus more attention on those kinds of actors. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof.
Just a member of the Black Management Forum. Dr. Luke, you know what worries me about black folks, African people? We like talking, nothing happens. I think it's a prof who was just over there. She just walked out. This continent will not be what it is if it was not of the complicity of the very useless, the futility of the political leadership of this continent. We will not be where we are today. And it's something that we do not want to acknowledge. African political leaders are useless. They are useless. All that they know that they're very good at doing is to steal, to loot.
Question?
The question is, no, we need to be very, sometimes vocal and, yeah,
Okay.
it's fine, but they are
Question.
useless, that's the point.
Question.
The point is, I don't know, I'm very pessimistic that we could ever get a situation where we have this illicit outflow of capital if it was not of the complicity of the very useless futility of the political leadership. How else can we, I don't know, I'm just very...
Are you trying
Look,
to ask, let me help you
I'm
out
making
there.
a comment so that he can respond to the comment, make a comment on the basis of comment I've made. Yeah, sure. Look, please don't channel me to talk in a manner in which you want me to. I'm just making a comment and I want to solicit a comment from him. We are where we are today. Yes, I know we are mindful of time. We are where we are today because of the complicity of the futility of the political leadership of this continent. How else can we combat that?
Yeah.
Is there any way else
Thank you.
that we can do that? I just wonder.
Thank you very much. Okay, that was number 3. Number 4, I've awarded the numbers. Put up your hands.
Good morning. My name is Mchezi. I'm a practicing accountant. This topic just actually captured my interest. Let me go. Some of my clients are in mining. I need to actually understand this. Thank you. Okay. My first question will be to Dr. Ndo. In terms of the metrics, who developed the metrics? which we're using to determine whether or not we're going left or right. Because if I've captured you correctly, the trade mis-invoicing and the GDP per ratio metric could be having an inverse relationship, if I've captured you correct. So if that is the case, it means then therefore we have got metrics which are not in favor, and if the institution which developed the metrics which we are using everyone internationally, they had particular intentions, then therefore we will be using the same metrics over and over again, getting the same result, which actually favors whoever developed the metrics, as opposed to we develop our own metrics which are going to actually give South African answers, because the situation in Zimbabwe might not be the same as what we have.
Sorry, the question.
Okay, who developed the metrics in essence, and yeah, how do we move forward with them, with the metrics? I've got a question also for Dr. Luke. When you talk about the financial institutions, you talked about the early warning systems, which identifies whether or not there is mis-invoicing. So in that, do we have institutions which are actually like an institution which is an oversight, who can punish? Because I've been sensing we don't have consequence management in place.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Thank you very much, Dr. Luke, for this presentation. My name is Sene Anamo, an Associate Professor of Economics, Department of Economics here at UNISA. My question is really on the data issues. It seems there is a problem. You mentioned that the data that is available is what has Professor, I think it's Leon Sindikumana, has worked on like from 2016, so you are working, maybe even going back, because that data is not available. So clearly there are data challenges, but my question is, beyond the UN Comtrade, are there any other data sources, let's say from financial institutions? Because financial institutions would ideally keep a record of these big transactions, and so is it possible to access such data? The second question, similar to what the ambassador posed, within the African context, so in the context of the African Continental Free Trade Agreement, whilst we may be concerned a lot about trade mis-invoicing happening at multinational corporation level, within the African continent, as we are promoting the AFCFTA, do we envisage such a problem? From what you have looked at so far, how serious is it within the continent? And looking at the protocols guiding the AFCFTA, is there any mechanism in place already to ensure that this trade mis-invoicing within the continent is controlled to some extent? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Out the back for this round. Thank you.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Deborah, and thanks to Dr. Luke for the presentation. The topic is really of interest to me because I'm more interested in the political economy of development. So mine is not really a question, perhaps it's just a comment. From what Dr. Ndo said, the invoicing could actually be a variable that has an effect on economic development. So to you, Dr. Ndo, I want to say to you as a comment, or maybe an addition, is from the African, from the basket of you have chosen, what could be of is for you, I know the issue of talked about the perhaps and the political regime structures in perhaps 5 countries, and then you want to see what is the variation in the have on tracing. Then we then come to the point of the role of institutions, institutional and governance structures that in influencing the privilege, the patterns, mis-invoicing in country. Then we want to say most African their structure, political regime structures, they are almost the same, but perhaps you could learn from the different structures of selected countries. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, Professor Bond.
Oh, could I answer a couple of those? I wasn't able to hear everything perfectly, but if you're allowing me to quickly respond to Edith and also to Darlene, maybe Darlene first, in just a couple of minutes. I think Darlene makes an extremely powerful point that both historically and today, we are dealing with, let me call it not just white monopoly capital, but Western multinational corporations. That WMC2 has, particularly with the 1999 permission given to Anglo-American, De Beers, Old Mutual, Investec, Didata, as well as earlier to GenCore, which became BHP Billiton, and Liberty Life. And you take that vast outflow of capital, and then you ask, what did they leave? And I hate to tell you, but if you ask PwC, what is the economic crime and fraud that was left? Economic crime and fraud, does anybody have a guess? Are they more or less corrupt than the politicians, as I say, ranking 83rd? And it turns out, I don't know if any of you have watched those statistics, they're not really published very much, say in Business Day. You would find the biannual Economic Crime and Fraud Survey ranks the South African bourgeoisie as the most corrupt of the bourgeoisies that they survey. They don't get every single bourgeoisie, but they've got a lot of bourgeoisies who, again, like Corruption Perceptions Index for Transparency International, they know each other. And that means, I think, we should look, again, it's the people with the color of skin that I have, white people who engaged in a crime against humanity during apartheid, and they did very, very well. And President Mandela and former President Mbeki too were very generous. They didn't impose a wealth tax. In fact, corporate taxes were cut from a peak of 52% in 1992 to 27% today. So the accusation that the ANC is a neoliberal nationalist party is witnessed by the fact that again and again and again, our corporates could become the most corrupt in the world, according to PwC. I trust PwC, takes one to know one, because they are an extremely corrupt consultancy. They, for example, wrecked South African Airways and many other things. Even Bill Gates is taking them to courts in Brazil for $1 billion worth of corruption. So I trust PwC's measure. Then to get to what Edith suggested, we can go back 40 years to think about how ordinary people react to that level of corporate criminality and support for, in this case, we're talking about the looting of Africa, the illicit financial flows, mis-invoicing. I would add to that the looting of the natural resources of Africa. So what did they do exactly 40 years ago? Well, some of you were there. I saw someone in the hall with some gray hair, and you were protesting, and you made South Africa ungovernable. But most importantly, that allowed many of us who were outside South Africa. I was protesting against banks, and the bank lending to South Africa stopped because on August 15, after the states of emergency were imposed in July 1985, 40 years ago, then on August 15, do you remember P.W. Botha did his little Rubicon speech, shaking his finger, and he said that South Africa's problems will be solved by South Africans, not by foreigners. Do you remember that? And we all did, and we thought this was marvelous. It showed he was cracking, and it led to a default on the debt by Botha because all the banks pulled out under pressure from you in the townships, in the communities, the trade unions, the women's movements, the youth, and also pressure from activists in New York, or I was in Baltimore then, but all over the world, we were protesting bank loans. And that showed me, and it showed, by the way, Palestinians, There's a wonderful film about this called The Bottom Line, if you heard from Johannesburg, by Connie Field. And when I've shown that in Gaza and in Ramallah, standing ovations, not for me, but for the example of breaking the apartheid system in 1985, because with your protests from below and with the financial sanctions, in a sense, the protests that caused banks to pull out of South Africa, what did that do? It meant Anglo-American CEO, Gavin Relly, and Tony Bloom and Zach de Beer, they flew to Zambia. And they met with Oliver Tambo and Chris Hani and Thabo Mbeki and Mac Maharaj and Joe Slovo. And, they basically started the process in that month, September 1985. They started the process of democratization. 9 years later, what the ANC fought for, one person, one vote, in a unitary state, was won. The Palestinians are very inspired by that and are pushing for BDS as a result. And on August 21 of this year, August 21, from noon to 2, you can also protest if you feel so inclined at the Department of Trade, Industry and Commerce, because Parks Tau, the minister, is allowing South African coal trade, 8 ships this year alone, 1.6 million tons of South African coal fueling the genocide. So that to me is the sort of lesson that you can take on this absolutely immoral force of Western multinational corporations and white monopoly capital at the same time, Glencore, but also Glencore's partner, Patrice Motsepe's African Rainbow Minerals, in the streets. And you'll know that you have a precedent for being really powerful in the streets 40 years ago. And that's obviously what we need to be now, today. Thanks.
Thank you, Professor Bond. I think, Luke, you're up next.
Thank you, Prof, for doing half the job for me. I will just finish and take over from where you left. Again, I think we all have seen probably the results that I have actually exposed the bigger issue that we have that we probably didn't know. And Ambassador, I also of the same emotional deposit to say, but this is something that is very simple and very straightforward. If this cup is 5 rand, price it at 5 rand, why change the price? And your question is, how can they improve? We as researchers sitting here have got a role to play. Some people tried it, and again, they were not fought by elites, they were fought by researchers. Let me tell you what happened. So we've got this UNCTAD report done by our patron. He has exposed how much trade misinvoicing is. And immediately there's a multinational company, I won't say words. So I happened to be working for someone who was very close to the multinational companies. They did a counter report to dismiss those figures. So immediately I come here with figures and tell you, guys, this is take it or leave it, this is what it is. But there's always a hard gun to destroy a picture that is true or not. So we have the role. When this was dismissed, we all said and say, no, it's fine. That's why it's not as popular as it is. Sometimes as researchers, we're also unethical. You actually write a counter report putting a lot of dismissing. There is no research that doesn't have limitations. But as researchers, we're working against each other, but yet we think we're saving humanity. So I don't know how we can do that, but just to probably provide a counter solution or solution, the first thing that we need to do is to dictate. We need to know what are we losing. But just knowing is not good enough. We need to go deeper and say, in this sector, we need to sectorize it. In this sector, what are we losing? We move from the sector, we go to the product. In this sector, which products are the major drivers? We move from the product, we go to the partner. Who are we selling this to? Then we come back to the perpetrator, who is moving the invoices, because they've got a company name and date. So that's the only way we can do it. But the starting point is, let's have the figures out. Fight about the figures when they are there already. If it's there, then we can fight, we can debate, but we can say, no, after all has been said and done, this is the level of trade mis-invoicing in South Africa, whether you like it or not, but this is what it is. And who's enabling it? Which products? Which sector? The motor industry did a very recent one. Yeah, I forgot. If I get time, I'll share it. Did a very recent one. Very, 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 very disastrous. So that's probably what I would say for now. Let us researchers provide the figures, the players, the products, the sectors, and then Prof. Miller, thank you for the comment, and that she was just emphasizing that the key players, like I'm trying to say, trade is never done at national level. It's done at individual level. So it means these people are individual people or individual companies. So the moment we unscope it, we open it up and say, no, when we say South Africa is traded with Zimbabwe, no. We are taking it at a very seriously high level. Let's say, how much has Luke traded to South Africa? Has he done it fairly, efficiently? Then, Francis, I understand you. I understand you very much, because it's in sync with what Dr. Ndo said. He said, if this capital had not been fleeced, if this trade mis-invoicing was not happening, we would not be begging. And your worry is the caliber of the people that are in charge. And let me be honest with you. I'm sorry. You are also to blame. I'm also to blame. And everyone in this room is to blame. Why? Half the time we let the people that are not the right candidates be the candidates. And yet we are, it's not because we can't, but we don't want to play part. We just want to blame from the outskirts. Be part of it, such that when you sit with them, you are now part of the leadership. You're saying, no, gentlemen, this is not right, this is right. But if you're saying it from the terraces and you want to go the campaigning way, it's fine. But some of these themes, they are not easily funded. For instance, the political elites are part of it. They want something that would be nice to their society. This is not nice to society because it's pointing back on them. So I understand your frustration quite very well. And we need to do something from a personal level going forward. Then, Prof, you mentioned about data issues. So data, we can get it from the customs office, because those are the people that should give us the data. Not even SARS, the customs officials. But it's unfortunate now. I don't know whether they've signed a binding secret agreement or what. That data will never come out. If you walk into any revenue authority, not even anywhere, and you say, I want transactions that have been done by this company from this period to this period, you will not get it. So the issue of transparency and institutions now, if I'm doing it as me, it's difficult to even go and say, I'm suing you for not giving me this data. But it's something that should be publicly available. That's why it's easy for us to use the first sword as a backbone, because at times they report their figures without, if it's a 5, it's a 5, my guy. I'm not going to change it. But if I'm going to home now, next week I'm going home, if I get to the office and say, my guy, yes, Nance, instead of 7, you write 6. So it comes back to the solution that I said, we are part of it. And we need to find our ways of untangling ourselves from that. Then you also asked about where will this take us with the issue of the African continent free trade agreement. It's a bit tricky. It's not a straight jacket. Why? Because remember, what incentivizes trade mis-invoicing is the tariffs, is the gains. So, for instance, the government will put an export incentive. The more you export, if I export 50 million, will give you 5% of the 50 million. So what it means, if I say my invoice is 40, but I want another $1, I'll just say, no, my total exports invoice are 60. So tariffing, in a way, is a way of killing that. Not tariffing, sorry. Without trade barriers, have a way of reducing that. How do we relate it to this, we'd find out, I foresee some cross-sectional dependency. There's a question that I asked in the last session about the G20 when I asked, what do you think G20 wants from South Africa? That's a very important question that we must always go back and look at. What do you think? My opinion is that South Africa is the door in and out of Africa, number one. You'd notice that everything that is mined in Zambia passes through here to the first world. So that door, that cross-sectional dependence is what we must then find ways. That's why I said we need to find each other as African countries. Without that, it's like a son in the village who's a thief, and we know that this person is a thief, and we don't want to talk about it. Then, Deborah, thank you for the contribution. I noticed that very much. In fact, one of my supervisors, my mentor, Professor Gwatizo, did a paper on trade mis-invoicing and political cycles. So you'd notice that as we go towards elections, if you foresee that this organization is going to go out of power, you'd see in mis-invoicing going up. Why? Because people are now externalizing. They're now preparing for the future after out of party. So it's quite, but I think we need to zero it in. Thank you for the very, very important questions.
Thank you. I will allow follow-up, but first and all, I want to ask Dr. Ndo if you would like to maybe, is there something you would like to respond to, comments, etc.? Come stand here, please, so that you can be audible.
Is the question regarding the fiscal metrics. I think I'm not quite sure who formulated the ratios, but I think in United Nations, maybe the IMF, those institutions, when they're trying to standardize, because remember with the ratio, now you remove the unit of measurement there, so you can use it for comparison across different countries. We're using different currencies. And regarding the issue of the ratio of mis-invoicing GDP, it's literature that I also came across. So I don't know who really started with that one there. And on the data issues, there are different data sources. There are those who use the Comtrade, there are those who use the DOT, and there are those who rely on the balance of payments, where they look at the errors and omission in the balance of payments in the trade one, and they refer to that as part of the trade mis-invoicing. And from what I know, the IMF, they've been working on data gaps, and it was also part of the G20 missions. So I think they're also addressing this. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ndo. We have some time left, a little bit of time for a next final round. I'm going to allow Professor Edith for a follow-up. Any other hands? There's number 2. Final, number 3. Okay, and this is done then. Okay. Questions, please?
Yes, thank you very much. I think I like Patrick's intervention around putting pressure on certain things. And I think this issue of trade invoicing actually needs us to put pressure. Recently, we have seen how civil society managed to put pressure for a national dialogue successfully, which is going to happen. And I think it's about time that also as society, as civil society, we begin to put pressure on government to put pressure on the companies or custom officials to release data. And schools such as us and researchers or think tanks can actually publish annually data and make it public for anyone, like the UN is doing, and make that kind of data available around trade, around invoicing, and actually go to that granular level you were talking about of products. Where are the products going, and you know how these products were, who is actually invoicing, and take it to that granular level in tabular form yearly, and be able to say, this is manganese, we sold it for how much, to who, and what happened. And And I think for us as a school, this is a very big platform that we can actually keep the data and release it to the public yearly, but we need civil society to be able to put that kind of pressure first, and then, because then you are able to hold those who are refusing to give us data. We can do it at company level, we can also do it at the custom officials and compare. This is the data we get from companies or that are doing this, and then this is the data that we get officially from customs. And I think it's not big science, it's not really difficult for us to do that. But what is needed is that pressure. Thank you.
Thank you, Prof. Edith. That is exceptionally valuable contribution. Let me allow now number 2.
My name is Matome. I've gathered that you are saying that the political elites and multinationals steal from us, the populations in Africa. What I want to know is, what is the role of the central banks in this? Because I also heard that they are affiliated with an institution called the Bank of International Settlement, which has got sovereign immunity. So the central banks, what is their role in this financial outflows?
Thank you very much. To the point. Final question. Okay, thank you.
I think it's so important such that it answers the very important question, not only for South Africa, but for Africa, as to why we always say Africa is rich at the same time we as Africans are poor. So in a major contribution, I think what you have shared answers that question. And if this is true, I think, Dr. Ndo, the implications go far beyond, they are too broad. They are too broad because I myself already see the implication touching on race as well. Because when we look at this, who are the participants? The elites, they are black, fine, but they are always few, and they are in politics. And then the corporate is white. So, and then the rest of us, it's us who are black, who don't even participate, and who are not even aware of such. So I think also, if we have touched on something that is so important, such that if we as a country of black people are to unite on something, this is something that we can actually mobilize ourselves and actually act against. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Final response from Luke.
Thank you very much. I am sorry, guys. If you are talking about trade mis-invoicing, I will not sleep. And Prof told me that, I told her that I was sick, and she said, are you going to make it? I said, if I'm going to die in there, I'm going to die. So this story, I'm sorry, if there's someone who's angry, I'll try to be brief. So we didn't just start by estimating these things. We went back and said, let's look at the legislation on the minerals. How has it changed over time per country? We went into Namibia. What has been the changes in terms of legislation? We went into South Africa. What has been the change in terms of legislation? We went into Tanzania. Remember when President Magufuli came to be the president, flows went down because immediately when he came to power, he stopped everything. So this was an intensive exercise of going back. Let's go and see where it's starting. After that, we said, okay, who are the participants in the mining sector of this commodity? Because we only had pearls. And we didn't end just by saying, who are they? We asked, where are they coming from? Where are they headquartered? How many multinational other companies do they have within Africa? So it was a long stretch going back. And it's quite very interesting and very sad in a way. Prof, thank you very much. And like I said, if it's about mis-invoicing and illicit financial flows, I will take it up to, if you bless it, I will take it up to be the leader in putting out the data. Not the leader, but the person who gets you to give you the data to put it out there. There was a question on political elites. It's difficult for me to manipulate a customs officer when I've got a truck full of platinum. It's very difficult. But you need someone with money and power. That's why they are always recurring. Because they can, even without the money, they can still manipulate. So they are at the center of this. And I wish we could speak without really pointing, but making them aware that you are part of the solution. Then he asked a very important question. This is why we had the Financial System Development Index. It was for us to capture the role of the financial system, but not only the financial system, but the role of the central bank. So with central bank now, we've got issues because it's different across countries, because there's what they call central bank independence, right? I'm not saying bad in terms of my country. I love my country. But there was a time when the central bank was involved in quasi-fiscal activities, something that has nothing to do with them. It points to the independence that are there. So already the elites have infiltrated the central bank. We're supposed to play a role of monitoring. So we are going in circles again. I don't know if that makes sense. So the central bank, yes, ideally it's structured to make sure that these transactions, once flagged, they are actually supposed to monitor such that if a bank pushes through a transaction that shows, that is suspicious of mis-invoicing, they should actually reprimand the bank. Without them reprimanding the bank, they are also part of the system now. Then, Dr. Zibane, thank you for the contributions. It's quite sad, but I'm happy that at least today my soul will sleep very free. I've told a group of friends who I feel share my sentiments. I don't know if there's a question that I've not answered, but I will be forever grateful, and thank you very much.
Thank you very, very much. I really believe that was a very, very sounding success. So I'm going to finally request our acting director of the Research and Knowledge Hub here at the Thabo Mbeki's African School to give a few closing remarks. And then I would just like to afterwards just ask you to stay for a second so that we can, by way of gratitude, thank our panelists.
Thank you and good day. I don't need 15 minutes for closing remarks because I will be stealing thunder to the panelists who did a fine job. You know, as the Thabo Mbeki School, no one will shut us down. We are brave enough to know that black people, African people who spoke too much, ended up being hanged like Vulisile Mini and colleagues. With Vulisile Mini, he was also a good singer. For singing, he ended up being hanged. We also know that some of them also died in detention. So, at our school seminar, you are invited. That's why the word is seminar, to speak more and make noise. Doesn't matter whether you are black or a Bantu or a native. We welcome you. We do know our history. We were killed for speaking up. If we didn't, we'll not be free today. So I will want to call you by name. Thank you, Dr. Luke. But what you did today is to make me think twice now as the acting director of research. Those who are going to come after you will have to wear three-piece suits and ties. They get a stipend every month. Their shoes should shine. Because when I met you outside there, I saw a mirror image of myself in your shoe. So that's going to be. And also I would like to thank our colleague here, Dr. Elfas Ndo, and also Professor Patrick Ball. Thanks a lot. And please watch this screen. Next month is Women's Month. We do have a seminar that will be presented by one of our postdoctoral fellows towards the end of the month. And thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Ndlovu. Adding to that, it is a double dosage and privilege. So in addition to the postdoctoral seminar, we will also be hosting the Women's Day celebration and in this very room on the 6th of August. So watch that. So finally, I would like to really also take off where Professor Ndlovu started and actually ended as well, but Professor Patrick Bond, you are online. We don't have a 3D printer yet, so we cannot send you something to show our appreciation. But Dr. Ndo, thank you so much. Afterwards, after I've done this and we've taken a couple of pictures, I'm inviting you all to lunch. Thank you.